Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I'm joined by our very own Jason Mackey of the Post-Gazette, who, talking with him earlier, was saying struggling to frame the beautiful 82-degree weather out there in Tampa. He's covering.
Sorry.
It's all right, man. Covering the Rays Pirates series out there in Tampa Bay. And Jason, I'll ask you bluntly, how are you feeling going into this World Series preview?
That a boy, way to set that up. Feeling good, man. Feeling good. My flight down here was a little empty, though. I'm surprised there weren't more people. Normally when you see high stakes games like that, no, I can't play it off for any longer than that. But I feel really good about it, man. They had a great first month. And I've sort of spent some time the past 24 hours trying to step back and think about this in its totality. Like, you went into this season with the Pirates wanting them, sort of expecting them to be better. I don't know how you look at this first month and you don't feel really encouraged about them being better. Is this a World Series preview? No. Are they going to make the playoffs? I mean, maybe. You're starting to see people dream like that. Again, I would just caution that it's 1 month. But I do think you can see in a month that they're in a much better place. A lot of the moves that they made this offseason have worked out. They've looked really good. And people were critical of Rich Hill or Connor Joe or whatever. And I mean, they've been outstanding, man. Kutch hasn't been a PR story. Kutch has been a really good baseball player. And we've watched him. We saw it in DC. We've seen it against some of the best teams in baseball. I feel really good about this team. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of similar there with you. And you've written a lot about, different guys and how they're either meeting or exceeding expectations like that. And one that kind of pops up to mind, you mentioned Connor Joe, is just how locked in he's looked for every single at bat. I mean, every hitter they'll talk about, during a regular season, they're lucky if there's a 7-day stretch or a 10-day stretch where the baseball looks like a beach ball. Like, I'm not one to speak for Connor Joe, but it looks like every day he's going up there, he knows what pitch he's looking for. It's in the strike zone, he's whacking at it and putting a charge into it. If not, he's taking everything, and great walk to strike out percentage. And I think that's just kind of a microcosm of what we're seeing from this team has been guys doing their job, not to do the coach speak player jargon, but it's true. Like, they've been assigned here to be a number 4 starter and give good innings and give good outings, and they're meeting that. Or they're a platoon outfielder who's hitting lefties as a right-handed batter or vice versa, and then they're exceeding that. And I kind of think that just goes to the theme of why we're seeing the results of the team. Everyone's doing what they were brought in to do and more than.
Right. We just got to take it one game at a time, Andrew. We got to make sure that we come together as a team. And no, I agree with you. Like, and that ties into what I was saying. The moves they made in the offseason were made for specific reasons. I think the Pirates did think that they had a pretty athletic team and would probably be able to leverage MLB's rule changes. Well, to do that, you need to be on base. To get on base, you need to have a more discerning eye at the plate. Connor Joe's been fantastic in that department. He's been by some metrics, you can say he's been the best in baseball. Like, no hitter is swung at a lower percentage of pitches out of the strike zone than Connor Joe. Sawinski's been right up there. I think Andrew McCutchen and Carlos Santana have brought that. And we're not even talking about leadership. We're just talking about playing baseball well, controlling at bats, talking to people about controlling at bats, what you're thinking in certain counts and sequences, and talking about hitting. Like, I think that has rubbed off on Jack Sawinski. I think that has rubbed off on Rodolfo Castro. Like, I think they have young, impressionable players that eat up what some of these vets say. Connor Joe doesn't seem like he's a veteran, but he is. I love the way he approaches the game, his business. I mean, we joked, I think, on this podcast in spring training, like, it's hard to pin the dude down. Like, he's just always going somewhere and doing something.
Yeah.
And that's great. Like, you shouldn't be just sitting at your locker, twiddling your thumbs, waiting for the media to approach you. Like, I'm glad that he's hard to chase down because it means he's doing the job. But the power's been there. The swing decisions have been there. I've really liked what Joe has brought. I've really liked, again, not to keep harping on it, but just like everything they did this offseason looks really good right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it kind of goes to the point that, maybe it's about time that the front office and the franchise in general is deserving of a little bit of credit. And I think that kind of brings me to the next point is, and you talked about this kind of on a larger scale, was, through conversations with Ben Cherington, was just why I find this series so intriguing. It gives us a glimpse into the Pirates' approach and some of the other teams that they're kind of modeling after. And I know Ben had said that it's not just the Rays and it's not just the Cleveland Guardians, but that's a topic that I find fascinating because as an outsider who didn't grow up in Pittsburgh but had an understanding of the market size as well as how the team was comprised and how the franchise really was comprised, it always made sense to me that the Pirates would be looped in with those teams. And we saw that stretch from 2013 to 2015, 2016. And I just kind of want to bounce that off you and talk shop on that about what you gathered from Ben, what do you make of his comments, and do you think the team is really trying to align itself with those other two, or is it true that they're maybe blending the approaches of, say, more middling markets with a Cleveland and with a Tampa Bay?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're sort of blending it, but you're going to take things that the Rays do, you're going to take things that the Guardians do, and they're going to be non-negotiable. And I have a ton of respect for the Rays. I love this conversation topic, by the way. I'm glad you brought this up. But
yeah,
because it's true. It's true. You can be as mad as you want to about Bob Nutting. Like, he's not actively, destroying Rapsodo equipment. I guarantee that. He's not actively dismissing scouting reports or firing scouts. Like, the Pirates actually have a lot of scouts. They have a lot of analysts. They spend a lot of money on that stuff. And I'm pretty sure they're actively not hiring idiots. Those people are very smart. So, I mean, what they're trying to do, again, is mimic this type of baseball, this type of doing things. It requires you to scout differently and more intently. It requires you to develop your own players more consistently and develop them better. The Pirates, coming out of 13, 14, 15, got really bad at some things that they simply can't get bad at. They missed in the draft. They misdeveloped guys. They underappreciated talents that guys had internationally. They didn't get enough. And that's costly. And teams like the Rays, the Guardians, the A's, they do that. And then it continues to build. And that's like, I think there's going to be a fork in the road at some point, Andrew, with their payroll. Because like the Rays do stay fairly consistent. I wrote this in the story today. They were, 60 million one year, but largely like in the $73 million range. Didn't really go much higher, didn't really go much lower, which is great. But if you're the Pirates, like, you want that to continue, which it did in the last run. 39 million was the starting point. They got to 100 million. That is true. That happened. Like, they can do that again. There's no reason they can't do that again. It just, you need to keep doing the sort of underpinnings of that, the drafting, development, all that stuff, and keep doing it well, keep finding guys, and it grows and grows and grows in the sustained success. So, I mean, that's for what I look for out of them. But, again, I could yammer on a long time about the things that I like with that the Rays do. Just to hype one more, because I can't shut up about it, but like the pitching stuff, figuring out pitch tunneling, the way they build a bullpen, all kinds of different arm slot styles. The Pirates have done that. Notice the bullpen's been better. So there are a lot of similarities.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting too, just to keep going with the perspectives. I mean, you think about what the Rays have done in recent years, especially, is you give a contract out to a Wander Franco, which people said, wow, the Rays are giving out money. They never do this. But to that point, yeah, it's calculated, right? There's an approach to this. There's a concept, and that's what you see with the Pirates dishing out the contract to Hayes, and maybe to a lesser extent with Reynolds, because that's a more established guy who's a little bit more veteran. But it's not as if, I think what we're seeing here to articulate is that it's not outside the realm of possibilities for the Pirates to do this. There's now concrete evidence, and we're seeing it that it's worked with other teams. It's worked in the past with the Pirates. They just fell into a lull where it wasn't working, because when you're firing blanks, you're not going to give out contracts when the pieces around it doesn't make sense, right? So it's calculated, and I think that goes back to a really good point from you talking about the Rays salary, where they're always dealing with kind of sitting in that $70 to $80 million range. That's probably the goal, right? You don't want to be the ebb and flow of 39 million to 100 million, right? Because then that's when you have the inevitable downfall, because after you peak with the contracts, then you're going to have to sell off guys, right? And the Rays, more often than not, if they're selling off guys, it's because they're letting, somebody, just to throw out a name, like a Kevin Kiermaier walk, because they've used them up for what they were worth as a great defensive player, and now they're at a downturn in their career, and it's not as if it's this huge gain the way it seems like, for instance, the A's are always selling guys at their peaks. The Rays, it never feels like they're doing that, and I don't know necessarily that the Pirates have to. It just means that, you have to lock down the guys that you really think highly of, and then it's more replenishing rather than worrying about how do we try and fill what they once did. We can let a guy go who's a fourth outfielder.
Of course. And the key to me, Andrew, is getting things back too, right? Like people would care infinitely less about some of these trades if the Pirates actually got something back. If you said, oh, we have to trade, I'm trying to think of a good example. It's kind of been hard in recent years, but I don't know, the Joe Musgrove, well, no, not the Musgrove trade. I guess Garrett Cole, you say like,
Yeah.
oh, we're not going to be able to retain him or whatever. Okay, you make the deal. Then you want to get pieces coming back. Like they got a little bit of Joe Musgrove and that's it. It was Jason Martin, Michael Feliz, and Colin Moran. Like no, no, and no. It's not even the Archer trade. It's just you're not getting enough back in trades. And I think people will look at the current regime and the negative ones are going to say, well, they didn't get enough for Josh Bell. They didn't get enough for Clay Holmes. And like completely fair. I'm not defending those trades. They didn't. But I also think you're not going to win every trade. I mean, that's like expecting somebody to go to the plate and go 10 for 10. Like it's not going to happen. Like sometimes the other team's going to get more benefit. I think this group has won more than it's lost in terms of trades. But yeah, it's just, when you make these trades and you use the guys up for what they're worth, like that is what's required. You spend on a key piece or three. And for the Pirates, like I still want them to get O'Neill Cruz and or Mitch Keller done, like not necessarily immediately, but get there. And then the rest of the stuff, like you're going to have to make tough decisions. You're going to lose guys, if the cushion is softer, if you have guys coming up in the system, sort of, I use the word backfill, but if you have somebody else that you can bring along, people aren't going to get mad about it. They're not going to care. If you have a good player coming in behind, it's like, oh man, they traded this guy. Oh wait, I want to see O'Neill Cruz. That's fun. That's the way that stuff's going to go if you just make good trades.
Right. And that just kind of leads to the, which is why I really don't think it's, franchise speak or coach speak, whatever phrase you want to say it. But when guys like Cherington or Shelton or any of them or Nutting say, we want to make sure it's the right guy, it's a calculated approach, like in all facets, because I think it does matter. You want it to be a marketable guy, an exciting guy. And Cruz is a perfect example of that, right? Just based off of the power and speed blend, which in today's game is everything. Like maybe Cruz isn't right now, if you look at WAR, whatever metric you look at, when healthy, probably wasn't the most, quote unquote, valuable player on the Pirates, right? You'd probably point to that being Reynolds, or if he's hitting, maybe it's Hayes, but like, Cruz is a marketable name that everybody knows. And I think that plays into it, maybe to a smaller degree, but, the quality of the character is something that maybe goes underappreciated when you're signing these kinds of long-term extensions, is that, the individual at heart, whoever that is, probably plays a big factor as well. It has to be somebody that represents the franchise or in a pretty fair light. And it seems like, the Pirates are doing that. I can't really criticize any of the moves they've made in that front. And it just leads me so many times back to the Rays and the Guardians, how they do it with leaning on young talent and signing the right guys versus maybe the most talented guy or somebody who's peaking at that time. It's calculated on a lot of fronts and feels like they're doing that, which I don't know, just makes me so excited about this series because it really is two teams that are peaking right now and it's fun. It's fun baseball.
Yeah, and I think just to circle back on the Keller Cruz thing, like I don't think the character issues are why they're not signed.
Yeah.
And I know you're not saying that. It's just a point I want to make. Those guys are exemplary in that department. Like they're great. I think part of it is logistical. We were joking with Cherington on Sunday. Is it Sunday in Washington? Something we all feel. I joked with Reynolds about this too. Like we're just everybody's glad it's over. It was a process. It was absolutely no, it was the right process, and I give them all the credit in the world. I'm meaning Brian, Ben, Nutting, Brian's agents, everybody. Like they got it done, and the fans benefit. So that's great. But like, it wasn't easy. It wasn't simple. It wasn't short. It took a lot of time, energy, conversation. So like, okay, that's done now. I don't know if that's going to lead to, Mitch getting done soon. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. I know it's generally harder to get things done in season. Like that's just not where everybody's head's at. So maybe you go back and okay, you get a third one done this offseason, and that's great. With O'Neill, to me, it's a little bit more complicated. Like if I'm O'Neill, I'm not signing that deal right now. I wouldn't. If I was the Pirates, I'd approach it and I'd try. I'd do my best to try to get something done with him. But if I'm O'Neill, I'm thinking like, man, my ability, what I would do with the full season under my belt, it's worth making less now because I stand to make so much more later. So, that's when we say like the timing might not be right. With this one, the timing might not be right. Like the Pirates just, you're trying to find a good number that the player is going to agree to that's fair. And I don't know if we know what that is. So I think those guys could still very well get done. I do think they're doing business differently. I've written about that. I've talked about that. I think, for a multitude of reasons, I think it was interesting to hear Nutting talk at the Reynolds press conference about saying, like, this franchise is the most important thing to me. He said, period, full stop. Bob does talk like that sometimes. And, and my personal suspicion, Andrew, is he was tired of sort of getting embarrassed a little bit. And knew back in 2019 this was the right move to make, and he was right. To me, in my opinion, it was a year too late. But like, you have to go full scale rebuild. They did. That was the ugly parts of it. And I think Nutting, along with other people, we're kind of tired of living through the darkness. Like, we're going to get better. We're going to win games. It's time for this to change. And again, give them credit. They've changed it.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, you go back to 2019, the worst spot you want to be in any professional sport, at least in my opinion, is you don't want to be that 500 purgatory, especially so in something like the NBA, just to transcend it to another league. But in baseball too, it's being in the middle is not where you want to be, especially just kind of mapping it out where these different teams in the NL Central were at, where the Cubs were just starting up their rebuild in the coming years. Where the Reds are right now as a franchise. To me, it was a smart play, and we're now seeing the Pirates reap the benefits of it. And it's going to be a fun series, one I'm excited for. And I'll just pose it to you. Any fun matchups in particular you're really looking out for these next few days out in Tampa?
I've got a big one circled tomorrow, man. Tomorrow? I can't get my days right. McClanahan and Keller, the pitching matchup for the middle game. I mean, that's going to be awesome, dude. I want to see those two go head to head. I'm curious. I thought it was interesting. The third game of this series, they're going with Velasquez instead of Rich Hill. I believe that's jumping Vince up a day theoretically, although they're both coming off the doubleheader,
right?
Yeah. So I think theoretically, assuming Rich starts on Friday back home in Pittsburgh, like that's just giving him an extra day. So I don't know, or if they skip a start. Like, that's just something that I'm sort of watching out for. I don't know the answer yet. I think we'll probably know when we get to the park later today. But, Vince has been really good too. Just to speak on that, 18 scoreless innings, has really made friends with his slider. I think the Pirates have taken, he was a bit scattershot everywhere. I remember joking with Vince in Denver about like all the different pitches he throws. And I'm like, could you throw 7 pitches? Do you think you could? He's like, oh yeah, I could. And, he used to be one of those guys that has like this really wide repertoire. He doesn't anymore. He doesn't. He's basically a 3-pitch guy. He's basically fastball, slider, changeup, and he's controlling them better. They're effective. His slider's been really good. If you look at some of the numbers on it, that's been fantastic. Sort of figured out who he is as a pitcher. So anyway, he goes in the third game of the series. I think the Pirates have a very good chance of getting 3 quality starts, really good starts from these guys. And I think they should be 3 very close games anyway. What about you?
Yeah, no, same here. And I mean, I'm curious to see, you mentioned Vince, but I'm also curious to see how Rowe does against this team. Starting later today, he's one I'm curious of, just because even with the velo dip with the fastball, he's spinning that slider as much as anybody. And against this Rays lineup that loves hitting homers just as much as the Pirates have this month, I'm curious to see how that plays. Is he going to get guys swinging out of their shoes and rack up huge strikeout numbers? Is it going to be, a rougher start for Rowe? Like, not to predict something like that for him, but just he's had, after a slower start to the year, he's bounced back, and to his own credit, has had a number of really good consecutive starts. Really liked what I saw from him against a tough Dodgers lineup, and that's a matchup that I'm certainly looking for, is him against this Rays team, and just in general, the run game too from the Pirates, whether that keeps up against these guys. That's something that I know you've written about a ton. Is
I love it. Bases. I love it. I love watching them play. I do. I am such a proponent of Major League Baseball's new rules, and I think it helps the Pirates, but I think it makes a more interesting product. I want, when a guy's on first base, I want to see that cat and mouse game. I'm even more fascinated by it now. Like, does the pitcher throw over? You get somebody who's fast, like G1 Bay gets on first base, I'm paying attention. I'm like, dude's going. Like, look at his lead. Catcher knows he's going. It's like that's a pretty good drama, man. It really is. And they've run the bases well. They've run the bases. And this is something I'm going to make another point on this, but they've run the bases aggressively, smart, all that stuff. They've talked for a couple years about running the bases better and doing the little things. And I think because they were so bad, they got dismissed by me and other people. You're like, oh, yeah, you want to run the bases well. Okay, that's great. I do think this is what they meant. Obviously, they didn't know the rules were changing, but we've seen the advantage that it creates. So I'm willing to eat crow on that. I didn't take it as seriously as maybe I should have. It's easier to see it for me from in my position as a team, that you're running a lot and stealing bases. That's not the only part of base running, obviously, but it's a nice entry point. And they've really, really, really done a nice job with that this season.
Yeah, and it's a top-down approach too, right? I mean, Carlos Santana hadn't stolen the base since 2021. Now he's flying around the bases, getting in scoring position, right? That's what I love about it.
It's like Anderson out there.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's great just to see that from that standpoint, that you have your guys like Bay that are burners. And, this is something I haven't talked to any of the catchers about yet, but we're not seeing opposing teams, with a runner on first doing a bunch of pitch outs. I don't know what the metrics are on that, if that really doesn't support it, but it's kind of this mutual understanding of all right, we're going to give the catcher behind the plate a shot. It'll be a fastball count that they might be running on, and we'll give them a fastball to throw on. But we're trying to attack the hitter because we don't want to get these Pirates batters in leverage counts. And maybe that's to some degree saying, hey, these guys are really fast and we're not going to be able to slow them down on the base pass. Let's focus on the task at hand. I have no idea. I'm just spitballing, but I find it really interesting that there's really no signs of it slowing down.
Well, I mean, the other thing, Andrew, is that they have the third highest OPS in the league, or in Major League. Yeah. I should say. I'm not giving that team a free pitch. No. You're just digging the hole further. I'm sorry, you got to throw the guy out, and they've not been able to do that. I would be emphasizing to my pitchers you got to be quicker to the plate. You got to be quicker to the plate. Because the way this works with every major league team, you've got a stopwatch. You know how long it takes the pitcher to deliver a pitch. You know how long it takes a runner to get from A to B. You know how long it takes a catcher to come out of his crouch, release the ball, whatever. You add up the numbers, and it's like it was against the Dodgers. The Pirates had a favorable math equation the entire time. And I don't know the exact times that things were timing out at, but you're basically saying as long as this continues, we're safe. Physics says we're safe. And so if I'm a pitching coach, I'm saying no more full kick. Your slide step into the plate. I don't care if you're uncomfortable. They're going to run wild on us. Figure out a way. Get the ball to the catcher. There's only so much you can do. And that's one thing I'm a little bit surprised, not to go on a total tangent here, but guys are still full kicking a bunch out of the stretch. You don't have a throw. You have limited throws over, but what you do have, you can get to the plate faster. But that doesn't seem as emphasized as I think maybe I expected or others expected, or maybe I've missed it because the Pirates have actually done a pretty good job, but it just doesn't seem like it's been that much of a focal point.
No, it really hasn't. I haven't noticed it. It's something that it seems like everybody's going full kick. No one's doing the slide. And maybe with lefties, it's obviously different. It's comparing apples to oranges with that versus righties. But when you're going 1-6 to home, good luck against Juwan Bay. It's just not going to happen. So
you have Rich Hill's borderline balk move all the time, which he gets away with it. So God bless him. Every time I see it, I'm like, darn close to a balk, but they don't call it. That's all right. No, 45 degree angle, close enough.
It's 44 degrees.
Yeah, it's about 44 and a half. All right. If you can get away with it, more power to you, man. I'm not knocking it. I'm tipping my cap, but every time I see it, I get worried.
Yeah, Rich is getting by. Everybody's getting by. It seems like it. I guess just getting a couple bit more nuts and bolts, some housekeeping here. So with Jack Sawinski, you bring him up earlier, staying hot. I know he had the hat trick strikeout game on Sunday, but we've both talked about it, but still seems locked in, still looks like he's turning in good at bats. Is that it? Is it that simple? Has Jack figured it out per se, or are we jumping the gun? What are you seeing there from him?
I think a little bit of both, as Mike Sullivan would say. He's probably hit you with that a few times. But yeah, he's been a ton better. he strikes out 3 times on Sunday. Who the heck cares? He's going to come back here and be fine. He's bounced back from that stuff before. I don't think Jack is a like 1-1 OPS guy or whatever the heck he's at right now. I don't know. It's very high. I think it's 10th in Major League Baseball, I want to say. I think that's a little much, but like, is Jack a really good hitter? Yes. Do I think he can be a 20-plus home run guy? Absolutely. He's got 6 already. But yeah, I think we've seen a lot of growth in his approach. I think we've seen a lot of patience, if that's the right word. I asked Derek Shelton plainly, I think it was in Washington, about, what's the biggest difference Jack Suwinski last year to this year. He said confidence, and I would agree with that. He's certainly up at the plate. Like, when he's not going well, he's not just like swinging at everything and hoping to hit it. Like, he's still comfortable in his plan, selling out to his plan. And if he gets a called strike called on him, whatever. But like, he was sticking to his plan. So I think we've seen some maturity. I just don't know if it's going to manifest itself in the 10th highest OPS in Major League Baseball. That's all.
No.
What about you?
Fans should enjoy it now. I think, it's the give and take, right? Is you're going to continue to be more patient. And this is a guy who naturally has a tendency to strike out a good deal, right? Those numbers are going to stay up high because you're looking at more pitches, you're taking more pitches, you're getting deeper into counts. That's going to come naturally, I think. But if you're a fan, I mean, you'd be really happy if the end of this, the culmination of this season is Jack hits about 250, 260 with 25 homers, which seems very well in play. I mean,
Yep.
You call that a great success, right? And I think that's very much in the realm of possibilities here. I mean, he's going to have a heck of a rest of the season too, but as they like to say, so far so good with Mr. Suwinski, Captain Jack. But
just a real quick point with that. I mean, how about their offense, or their outfield actually solidifying a little bit? We went into this thinking there's going to be a pretty heavy rotation, but I mean, right now, Derek Shelton can write down Brian Reynolds, Jack Suwinski, and Connor Joe and feel pretty darn good about it.
Yeah, and 3 of them are every day, and you got to give credit, tip the cap to Connor Joe, and obviously that's come at the downturn of Kanan Smith and Jigba going down to AAA, but like, kudos to Connor. He basically played himself into a regular role, which that wasn't really the expectation come opening day into the March there. It was supposed to be that Kanan was going to face a bunch of righties, but he just wasn't getting playing time. And, maybe that's a slight on him a little bit just based on he had a slow start to the season. The average wasn't high and wasn't getting a lot of at-bats, though. I mean, he wasn't getting time, and it's because guys like Joe were really cementing themselves as deserving everyday reps. So, like I said, it's 3 guys who have really kind of taken the bull by the horns there, which – a little bit of a surprise. Thought it was going to be 4 or 5 guys at least rotating out there, and really haven't seen that.
Same. Yeah, it's been really good, and that's just one of those things that it makes me smile, makes me laugh. Derek Shelton loves to rotate guys, or so it seems. But you've got guys putting down roots right now. Like, you ain't rotating the guy with the 1-1 OPS out of the lineup. And it's not like I'm rooting against Shelton. I like Shelton a lot. I just think it's funny. We talk about when are you going to use your closer? How are you going to deploy your bullpen? And previously, like, he's talked about, wanting to use his closer in the highest leverage, not necessarily the 9th. Like, he thinks about bullpen construction in a new age way, which is great. I mean, I'm not knocking it again. Like, I actually agree with that. But what do you know? He winds up with a traditional closer, the guy that, is just like lights out. You're going to use that dude. He'd get killed if you didn't let Yinzers react to, like, having Renegade in the 9th inning and that moment that it creates at PNC Park, especially if they keep winning and get good. Like, that's going to be one of the coolest things in sports. And then you've got Holderman locking down the 8th. Bednar or Underwood's been really good in the 7th anyway. So it's very much become a traditional bullpen construction. 7, 8, 9, get the ball to your back end guy. So whatever. That's good stuff, man. That's baseball. People play well. They lock down positions, and you can't move them from them.
Yeah, what a concept. If you get every save that you're asked pretty much and your ERA is below 1, maybe you stick in the role. What a concept.
Yeah. I guess they'll keep running Bednar out there for now. Walk, 17 strikeouts. Opponents are hitting not very high against him. It's been good.
Yeah. Well, on the note of the bullpen, though, as we keep up with housekeeping, want to ask you about Cody Bolton. You get to see him get a little bit of action out there in DC. I mean, initial takeaways from him, he's had a heck of a journey to get up to Pittsburgh and be with the Pirates. Curious what your thoughts were from seeing him out in the bump.
Yeah, it has been a journey for him, man. I remember talking to Cody a couple times when he was in the minor leagues, and was a starter, was a top 10 prospect as a starter, and here he is in the bullpen. I thought he pitched really well, efficient, went after guys. That's sort of what we've known Bolton to be when he's on. He's fooled around with slider and curveball and pitch mix and all that stuff. I like where he's at. The cool thing for Cody, honestly, is like there's a job open right now with Will Crow going on the 60. He pitched well in Washington. He'll probably get another chance in Tampa, I would imagine. He keeps pitching well. Like, he's not going anywhere. Their bullpen down there has been good, but not great. Like, Yuri De Los Santos is a guy they sort of expected to win a job, and he hasn't done a ton. The Bolton has pitched really, really well and has sort of taken to the relief role. So I look at him, and I think if you keep throwing strikes, if you keep challenging guys, 3 pitches, like we're not talking about somebody who's just throwing 1 and trying to get by with 2, like 3 legitimate pitches. I like his chances to keep pitching up here, and I like his temperament. I think you've talked to him. He's real quiet, doesn't say a whole lot, but very respectful, good kid. And he's healthy too. He's had a lot of injury stuff. I know, like, I want to say, is there a shoulder in there, a knee in there? There's a long stretch where he didn't pitch, but looks really good now.
Yeah, hard for me not to root for a guy from NorCal too. So selfishly had to bring up Cody.
That's right.
Yeah, had to bring up Cody Bolton there for that reason.
He's your neighbor.
Yeah, exactly. Him, Bob Stevenson, Mark Mathias. I'm loving covering the Pirates.
Man, that's right. That's right. Berkeley guys.
Yeah, if you ever want to have a hilarious eavesdrop, just listen to me talk to any of those 3. It'll be obnoxious Bay Area discussion.
There's no such thing, man. There's no such thing. I'm such a Bay Area fan. I love it.
You warm my heart, Jason. Well, last thing, we'll get into it. Just Andujar comes up. Unfortunately, that means Drew Maggi heads back down to Altoona. The move there, thoughts on that, and any final words, I guess, on Drew and what that moment was like, getting to see him out there in DC, get the base hit.
Oh, man. I was just looking before we hopped on here at Drew Maggi's Magical Media Tour. My man has been everywhere and talked to everybody about everything, and good for him. It's tremendous. He should. He deserves all the shine he's getting. That was such a special moment. I've enjoyed getting to know Drew covering this. I feel like it's funny. We're kind of at a different level, right? Like the local guys, like we're the only ones who talk to him in spring training. We see him when he gets up here. We're like, hey, what's up, man? What's going on? Like, long time. How you been? It's just a different relationship than some of the national folks have. I don't know how many Drew Maggi stories I've written this season, probably 6 or 7, maybe more. And it's still cool. It's still fun. I guess what I would leave with, I'll get to Andujar in a second, is just what a neat circumstance that it was that he got to do this, right? Like, he was supposed to go down. He wasn't supposed to come back up. And then all of a sudden the game gets rained out Friday in Washington, doubleheader Saturday. He hadn't left. They were afforded an opportunity to bring up a 27th guy. Second game in the doubleheader goes sideways. There's an opportunity to bring him in. He gets his first hit, first RBI, his first double. Like, it's just tremendous. So it was really neat. And Andujar to me is a little bit of a different case. He's been raking down there on a fairly significant salary for a major leaguer. They wanted to get him back up here. We saw why. Very good attack in the fastball. I like the swing on the first one out of the zone, crushed it. But I could see Andujar being a part of this team going forward, especially with G-Man Choi out. If nothing else, like if they have somebody go down, they actually have depth now. Obviously, they haven't had a ton of depth before, but God forbid if Connor Joe would go down or something like that, or an outfielder, even for 10 days, like you can bring Andujar up here and feel just fine about it. So I like that part of it.
Yeah, and it gives that position versatility, like you said. I mean, you can play a couple of infield spots. They've played him in right field in spring training, a guy that you can kind of move around, but unfortunately it meant the end of the Drew Maggi experience in Pittsburgh, which was a fun ride for all involved. And yeah, my phone was blowing up, even though I wasn't out there with you in DC. The minute it happened, that every notification, every push on Twitter, you better believe it was going off. Namely, J Mackey PG. But here we are.
Oh, why do you have me alerted? Make me self-conscious now. Every time I tweet, I'm like, man, this is buzzing in front of Andrew. He's going to be irritated at me.
That's how I keep up with the Pirates news. If I'm not there, Jason Mackey's there. That's our slogan.
That's right. You can keep up with Pirates news and hear me complaining about parking, which I resolved to do less. I was agitated, and now I felt bad about it. So I'm going to stop tweeting stray thoughts about parking. I'm just going to stick to the Pirates, stick to the beat, stick to the brand.
Yeah. Curse the Navy Yard, but $98. I saw that one, and I was asking my girlfriend's family, and they're like, "Yeah, that's a Metro one." I'm like, "I think Jason knows that one. I just think with a doubleheader, how could you know?" Yeah.
Here was my thought process. This is how it went down, and I can't explain this on Twitter. So I'm like, all right, $49 is ridiculous, but I'm parking there all day. Like, there's no way they're going to charge me twice, right? Like, I'm not even moving my car. I'm just in. It's the media lot. We got an email about it. I'm going to show them my pass. Like, they're just going to say, okay, you're covering both games, $49. Call it a day. Well, I do that. She swipes my card, and then she's like, are you staying for the second game? Like, yes. Why? And that's mistake number one. I should have lied right there. And she's like, well, I got to charge you twice. I'm like, well, I'm already in for $49. What, yelling at me to go to the Metro isn't going to, like, I can go take the Metro, but I've already paid $49. In between games, there's not enough time for me to go move my car to do all that. Like, I barely finished writing in enough time, post-game clubhouse and all that stuff to get ready for the second game. So anyway, there was nothing I could do. I was in for $49. I'm like, whatever, screw it. But yes, in hindsight, absolutely a Metro trip. I learned my lesson. I will not do that again.
I just can't.
And I will not complain about it either, because honestly, Andrew, this is where I learned it. I'll say it here. Liz Clark from the Washington Post, who's retiring, and I used to work there, as people know, said, nobody ever wants to hear a sports writer complain. And I heard that very early on in doing this. It was probably 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. And I've tried to live by it. I don't think people ever want to hear us complain. They think what we do is the greatest thing in the world, which it is. I think I'm obsessed with this job. I think people grasp that. I try to not complain. If you complain, I'll yell at you. Not really. But we shouldn't complain doing this, right? Like, we're very lucky. And I don't care if I have to pay $98 for parking. Like, shut up. I'm getting reimbursed. Just shut up, Jason. Just park the car, go cover the Pirates, and be happy. So that was the lesson that I take from that situation.
Man, podcast listeners got Pirates news, life advice here. This has been a heck of an episode.
I know. You get an early flight, a little too much coffee. Never know what could happen.
Well, it's been a wonderful time, Jason. I'm glad we got to do this, and very jealous of you being down there in sunny Florida. But enjoy the sunshine for us up until about 2:30, something like that. Was that about right when you'll head to the park?
Yeah, something like that. We don't have exact clubhouse times, but somewhere around there. Yeah, and then all the sun goes away and we go inside. Darn it. All right.
Nothing beats
good talking.
Yeah. Great time as always. Enjoy the May baseball inside. And the rest of you, subscribe to our content here on the YouTube channel, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it on Apple Podcasts, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down in the description.